Back to another episode of Lost in the Farmer's Market Garden Life, where today we're looking at this lovely specimen here, and its cousin in the next episode is going to probably surprise you a little bit. But anyway, what is this lovely specimen? These two specimens, there's actually two of them in there, planted for dramatic effect. Well, the scientific name is Achillea millefolium, and the specific variety is flower burst red shades. They could have just called it like red shades or something. I mean, that's a bit much, but whatever. Its common name is yarrow. Yeah, that yarrow. Achillea millefolium is the medicinal yarrow. Now, before you jump on me and say, oh my god, no, it doesn't bloom white, it's not medicinal, it's the white yarrow with a mutation that makes it bloom red that has been propagated. Exact same plant. But I digress. It is in the Asteraceae family, and the name Achillea comes from the name Achilles of Greek myth, who actually used this plant to treat injuries and wounds on his troops. And yes, yarrow has medicinal purposes, but we'll cover that later. Millefolium means 1,000 leaves, and that comes from the fact that each individual leaf has these little leaflets on it. You know, you see that right there and there? And it looks like it has 1,000 leaves. It doesn't actually have 1,000 leaves. It looks like it may have 1,000 leaves. I mean, there's probably some creative math that could get you to 1,000, but realistically, not so much. Sort of like how a millipede doesn't actually have 1,000 legs. It just kind of looks like it does, unless you get into those weird, massive ones from like the rainforest. They might, but in general, not so much. It just looked like they did. Like, sort of like how centipede. Centa means 100. Yeah. Anyway, this plant is native to Asia, Europe, and North America. So, technically a native, despite what some herbicide companies like to say. It's hardy in USDA zones 4 through 8 and is classified as a perennial evergreen in zone 8A, at the very least. I mean, I'm sure it's classified differently in other places. So that means zone 8 is the furthest south this plant can grow reliably. Not to say that you couldn't adapt individual environmental conditions to make it do better, like partial shade, straight regular irrigation, but zone 8 is about as far south as it'll readily tolerate on its own. The pH for this plant, in the soil pH range for this plant, is 5.5 to 6.8, and it prefers hot, dry soils. Well, out here in the Sandhills in 8A, I think we got that covered. In fact, apparently someone really likes yarrow in the background. I don't know if you heard that, but someone's honking their horn. Anyway, you can find traditional white yarrow that is escape cultivation along roadsides, along highways, in the grass medians. If you are really eagle-eyed, you will find it, alongside other things that have escape cultivation and are doing just fine. So, obviously it likes our soils. Its exposure is full sun preferred, which is not a surprise, and that's full laser southern sun. But it will tolerate partial shade, partial shade, partial sun, and the more shade it gets, the leggier and less fluffy it looks. So, yeah, keep it in the sunny side. Seriously, yo. Sunny side. Sunny side. Let's see how many times I can squeeze that into this video. Anyway, its height can be up to 3 feet, and its width can be 6 inches to 1.5 feet. So it can reach the sunny side. And now it has a bunch of other names that are worthy of note, like Old Man's Pepper. You got me, I don't know. Devil's Nettle. Sanguinary. Milfoil. Soldier's Woundwort. Thousand Seal. Now, I can understand Soldier's Woundwort and Sanguinary because those both sound like terms for a medicinal herb. Sort of like Knitbone or Heal All, you know, so forth and so on. Thousand Seal I can kind of understand also. But Devil's Nettle just seems harsh and mean. It seems seriously mean. That seems totally unnecessary, but I digress. Now, according to the USDA, it's classified as a native and an introduced plant, which is a little bit confusing because how can it be both at the same time? Not really sure how that works. They were not clear in the document that I read that in. They sort of said that it's been introduced, but it was kind of already here, but whatever. You know, right round, round, round like a record baby, I guess. So it has fast to moderate growth, which I believe. I mean, these plants have gone from little tiny things in a 4-cell pack, you know, those black plastic things that the annuals come in, to what they are now, and I'm sure they're going to get way bigger by midsummer, and I will do an update video, especially if they bloom, because I want to see that flower burst red shades color. But anyway, the essential oil extracted from this plant is dark blue, which is kind of interesting. Contact with it may cause allergic skin rashes, so you got to be careful with this one, folks. If you are prone to getting skin rashes from contact with certain compounds, this plant might cause problems for you. The young leaves, in a very limited quantity, can be eaten raw, usually in a salad. Apparently, young leaves, by that they mean little ones like this guy here, and you know, the younger tender leaves. The whole plant can be eaten, but its flavor is a bit rough to deal with, especially when you're talking older leaves and flower stalks and flowers. But if you're desperate, I mean, greens are greens, I guess. But the gastrointestinal consequences might not be worth it. Additionally, yarrow was used at one point in a compound called gruit. I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced. Gruit. Gruit. Groot? I'm Groot? Whatever. But anyway, it was used to flavor beer in the Middle Ages before hops really took over for beer, you know, making... Basically, when you brew beer, and this is totally off topic, but when you brew beer, you put the herbal compounds together in what's called a wort, W-O-R-T, and that includes the hops. And what you know, do that at a certain point, and you'd add the hops depending on what type of beer you were making. Determines how you would go about doing that. But anyway, you add them together like that, and the end result would be the pre-beer, and then the fermentation and adding of sugar would make it the final beer. Yeah, so that's how that would work. So Gruit is basically the replacement. Now, if you remember from my video about germander was used in replacement of hops at one point because hops took a while to spread across Europe, and it took a while to spread across Europe. So in the time it took for them to finally get all everywhere and all that stuff, people were brewing with all kinds of crazy stuff. And in fact, if you've ever brewed, there's no shortage of things you can turn into liquor, unfortunately. Yeah, there's a lot. Things you didn't even know. But anyway, so that's that. Now, yarrow in general is a pretty plant because of its structural leaves. I mean, the leaves are, you know, they're like they are. They almost look like a feather. The flowers come up on tall stalks, and they're almost, I want to say they're almost umbrella shaped, but not truly. There's a specific term for that, and it's eluding me at the moment. But what it really does, even if you don't use it medicinally, you don't eat it, you don't use it herbally, it attracts the pollinators when it blooms like gangbusters. It's an aster. Of course it's going to. It's an Asteraceae. What were you expecting? Asters bring in the pollinators. Or, as the kids say, my asters bring all the pollinators to your darn right they're better than yours. So, with that said, you should have yarrow in your yard, if not for your apothecary garden, for general purpose of bringing in the pollinators and having a tough perennial mischief sighting. A tough perennial that can withstand sun, heat, drought, and by the way, critters don't like to eat it. Deer, rabbits, not so much. So there's a win for you. So, if you have any thoughts about growing yarrow, if you've ever planted it, you like it, you have a color you prefer, you have thoughts on using it medicinally, please put those in the comments section. If you haven't already, please hit like, and if you haven't, please subscribe. It helps the channel grow. The Forage blog is still going. The link to it's in the description. And as always, folks, keep them growing, and thanks for watching.